Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Hiring Manager. Today, we have Elliott Wislar with us. Elliott has over 30 years of experience in the financial industry and is the CEO and founder of Clearbrook, a diversified asset management company with over $11 billion in assets under management and advisement. Clearbrook is headquartered in New York City with international offices. Prior to Clearbrook, Elliott held senior executive positions in marketing and distribution for private wealth with UBS, FleetBoston, and the Boston Company. He received his MBA in International Management from Thunderbird School of International Management with a focus in finance and Japanese language. Super interesting. Outside of finance, Elliott sails competitively and has won 2 world championships. Additionally, he recently launched his book, Voyage to Victory: Stories and Strategies for Resilience, Risk, and Reward. It's a pleasure having you on as my guest today. What an impressive background, by the way.
Thank you, Leslie. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. So you've had quite the career. I want to dive in and start with your early career. So at Fleet Bank, where you were managing director, if I'm not mistaken, you were part of the initiatives which grew assets under management from $6 billion to $226 billion in 11 years. That's obviously phenomenal growth. So I'm curious, what actions did you undertake to contribute to this growth?
Well, I was very fortunate. I reported up to a genius in banking, Terry Murray, who was our chairman and CEO. And about half the growth was organic and half was through acquisitions that we made. And there was one individual, Mark Wheeler, and myself, that parachuted in every time that we made an acquisition. So I actually moved to Maine from the New Jersey area and spent 4 years in Maine, pulling together 3 acquisitions, and then to New York, to Boston, and back to New York. And the goal was to take these disparate teams and to make them fleet teams. And it was really interesting because Terry was always looking at his next acquisition. And so we would acclimate the new assets into the bank and then develop the old processes into our processes. And there were a lot of naysayers at the time, but Terry was just push forward kind of Irish Catholic, never say never. And he really showed the banking industry that you could do this. And he did it both on the asset management side, the commercial side, the credit divisions. And he really paved the way for banking. And Brian Moynihan, who's now chairman of Bank of America, came up through the ranks after he left Edwards and Angels, who was our law firm out of Providence, Rhode Island. And so Terry was really the person who pulled this all together. And I was just very fortunate to be part of the team. And, I had some mentors at the time who would say, Elliott, why are you moving to Maine? It's just such a small state. And within 2.5 years, we turned it around to the second highest producing state. And then, we looked at going back to New York after the acquisition of NatWest. And the same mentors would say, why are you going to New York? It's so competitive. And we'd go to New York and we turned New York around. And I thank Terry Murray because he was just an incredible individual.
That's amazing. And as you mentioned, even with half being organic, that's still, 113 billion. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, and Leslie, we did a couple of things that were really interesting. Back in those days, there was always a model that you had the portfolio managers, and then you had relationship managers. And the portfolio managers sat in seats all over the franchise, and they really didn't connect. And reporting to Terry Murray at the time was the chief investment officer, Hal McKinney. And we sat with Hal, and we came up with a plan that if we replace the relationship managers with the portfolio managers who were in the marketplace, and we had them meet with clients because they were the people managing the money. They knew how they were doing it. They could actually communicate the secret sauce. And we actually saved the bank a lot of money. And then we took a small team, which was the investment committee, located it in Providence, Rhode Island. And this one change made the biggest differentiation for the bank. And there were a lot of banks, a lot of asset managers who followed this after Fleet took this on. So there were a lot of things that Terry Murray, Hal McKinney, and the team, which I was part of, embraced that will change the marketplace.
That's amazing. Congrats to you guys on that growth there. And speaking of marketplace, although a slightly different topic, but it reminded me of just how the financial industry and demographics are changing over time. Even though the number of women in financial roles is increasing, the finance industry is still male dominated, especially when it comes to C-suite positions. So you have obviously firsthand experience in the financial space. I'm curious, did you notice inequities between women and men, particularly earlier on in your career?
Yeah, I hearken back to the Fleet days again, and back in the 1900s, 1990 to 2000, when I was very involved in Fleet, it was tough for women when they were trying to decide between a family and a career. And, many institutions couldn't embrace or didn't embrace, they didn't have the philosophy, didn't have the know-how. And I remember that we had, within my division, we had some incredibly talented women who were starting families. And one, I still remember Teresa Finch, and she ran our reporting, our risk metrics, the financial reporting that I used to present to the vice chairman, and our request for proposal divisions. And she started a family, and it was just so tough on her. And I said, Teresa, why don't you just work 3 days from home and be with your children? That'll work better. You don't need to commute. And then we started implementing it across the entire division that I ran at the time. And lo and behold, after Terry Murray stepped into the chairman and Chad Gifford became CEO, I was called up to Boston, and the Boston Globe gave me an award for being the most I forget what the award was called, but it was evolving the division to embrace women in the marketplace. Yeah. And, honestly, I was just doing what was best for, the division I was running, because these women were incredible. And without them, we couldn't run the company the way we were running them. So, things have evolved a lot now. But back then, it was just making sure that the smartest employees within the division I was running, who were women, got the same shot as the men did.
I appreciate that. Some could say I'm biased, but no, I honestly know no matter what group, whether it's women, minorities, or even if there's a field that doesn't have white men and we need more white men, whatever the case is, I think it's great to work to even the playing field. So that's awesome that even before the times of now you have a lot of more flexibility. I think the pandemic did a lot of that, but especially like you said, back in the 1900s, it sounds so long ago.
Well, I had to make sure it was 1990 to 2000.
1990s, right?
I mean, it's a generational change, and which we need to embrace.
100%. So kudos for being ahead of the curve that way and doing what was right, like you said, for your division, and helped a lot of women. What do you feel are some initiatives that could be taken? You obviously took some, but that could be taken today to encourage and empower more women for success in the financial sector?
I mean, and this goes on further than women today. It's LBGT community. It's racial. I mean, it goes on, and it's philosophical. And, a friend of mine launched 2 ETNs, exchange traded notes, in Canada that traded around companies, Fortune 100 companies in Canada that embrace disabilities. And they found that those companies, the return on equity for those companies were 7% higher than those companies who didn't. And it's really just a mantra. It's thematic. If you embrace women in the workplace, if you embrace LGBT, it becomes part of the philosophy of the company, and it becomes something that all the employees can embrace. And over time, it really accelerates the growth of the company. It gives people something to live for day in, day out. And I think it gives pride of ownership for the employees. So, when you ask me, Leslie, what can people do? It's putting programs together for daycare so women can be at work, embracing remote work that came through COVID. But now you see, whether it's the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, people being forced to come back to work 5 days a week. I don't know if that's the right thing. Maybe we need to look at that more. We certainly do at Clearbrook, and families need to embrace the ability to have their children close at hand if they need to. So it's embracing women in the workplace. We need more at the C level. We need more at the board level. We need more diversity. And so it's color skin, it's LGBT, it goes across the board, because you can't count out intelligence, because it goes across the board.
That's so true. That's so true. Thanks for speaking on that. And also that flexibility aspect, I partner with, associate with flexibility when you say also being more open to maybe sticking with a remote model, or at least having flexibility between the both. I think going with change and seeing where change leads us is always good, and we can adapt. I think if someone's very focused, whether in a traditional office setting or a home office setting, they'll get the work done. I mean, I work remotely, so I'd say I'm pretty productive. So yes, I like that you speak to that too. So we spoke about some things at Fleet. What did you obviously learned and did different things while you were there. I was curious, what were your main takeaways from your time at Fleet Bank? And then when you left from Fleet Bank, did you immediately transition to UBS?
Yeah, so I had a small stint consulting with a 4-star admiral to start a company called Scarvin Enterprises, which was an idea about looking at information flow and risk metrics at a wholly different way to create indices. And Scarvin was actually sold to Boeing. And my youngest was born during the consulting aspect of that. And we're all 1099. So I did take the job at UBS because I needed insurance. And this is another thing for another podcast. But I needed, the consistency of insurance for my youngest with cerebral palsy. Parachuting into new states with Fleet were like startups, but Scarvin was a true startup. And that gave me the appetite to start thinking about the industry on the financial services side when I got to UBS. And one of the things that was missing from my perspective was transparency and client advocacy and independence. And this is pre-07, 08. We started Clearbrook in 2004. And I'd get home and see my kids, and they were just starting to grow up, and they'd say, "How was your day, Dad? What was it like?" And I sat in front of a lot of religious endowments and foundations, and I would talk to them about the products and services we would have at different entities. And they were all proprietary. And they were all developed in the interest of the institution, not so much I felt for the end client. And I felt that if you broke down the investment supply chain and you looked at all the components and you reconfigured it with the client's best interest at heart, with full transparency, you could create a company like Clearbrook that could work with a client with their best interest at heart. So we forged out, and I had a partner at the time, and created Clearbrook. And it's been 20 years now. And when you create a company like Clearbrook with full transparency, client advocacy, and independent, it's not quite as easy that the opaque companies have, because you are divulging everything. But we've done very well. And after 07 and 08, where like the telecom industry and other industries, where there's been a complete reconfiguration, financial services did reconfigure. So we were ahead of the game. We stick true to, our thematic approach. And that's why we started Clearbrook. And this is our 20th anniversary, and it's been a great ride.
20 years. That's a lot. That's incredible. It's a good period of time. That's amazing to have a business. And so, yes, you being the CEO and founder of Clearbrook, and you mentioned a little bit about some of the direction you started. What services does Clearbrook provide?
So our core business is advising and managing total portfolios for endowment foundations, pensions, family offices, and high net worth individuals. And we have about 70 clients in the United States. And as you mentioned, about 11 billion in assets. And we do have offices overseas. With my master's in Japanese, I was very fortunate to go overseas and spend time in South Korea, Hong Kong, and Japan.
Wow.
So we've had an office in South Korea for 14 years. We've had clients in Japan. We've spent numerous years and years in Hong Kong. And we've had an office in Oslo, Norway now for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
As Oslo is on the forefront of ESG, or environmental social governance, investing for the EU. And that's where we spend a lot of our time. So, besides the US, we're offshore as well.
Amazing. And so obviously you do a lot of international business
Correct.
as well. That's great. Out of curiosity, how did you come up with the name Clearbrook?
Clearbrook. So Clearbrook, I was always fascinated with BlackRock, Blackstone, and other companies. And, at the headwaters of every river is a clear brook. And where the spring comes out of the ground, the waters are clear. And as I mentioned, Clearbrook is transparent. It's not opaque. And so as, the brook goes further down, think of the Mississippi, the waters become more opaque, more muddied, less transparent. So when you think of a clear brook, you can see everything in a clear brook. It's transparent. So that's our model. We're very clear and transparent. So that's where the name came from. So in a clear brook. And so we've tried to stick to that clear brook or that transparent model forever. And it has bode very well for us.
That's great. That's great. Currently, how many staff are on your team at Clearbrook?
Yeah. We have about full-time 18 staff. About 70% of the staff are dedicated to research and analytics. The rest is admin. And then we have about 6 or 7 1099s that help with sales, marketing, and others, but other functions. But we have full compliance, legal, admin, and you'd be surprised, Leslie, how we're approached by other groups who would love to partner with us around the globe. We've had a great reputation everywhere we go for that 20 years. We're meticulous. We're, some people would say, too slow in moving, but we enter every new market and everything we do very with a very diligent eye for how we're going to approach that market.
Yes, that's good to be thorough, like you said, diligent. In my opinion, it's better to take a little more time and make a well thought out decision versus kind of precipitously get into something for sure. And because you're on Ask the Hiring Manager, of course, I'm going to throw in a few hiring related questions. So the first is, and you mentioned you have a staff of 18 and then with some additional 1099 workers. What type of roles have you hired for?
So in the past 5 years or so, senior management roles, every on the admin side, on sales, trading. So, and, just to augment our growth as we've gone international. And we've also have some new partnerships. We have a partnership with the board of Mitsubishi out of Japan. We have a partnership with LG and LG Electronics out of Seoul, Korea. So as we have grown with these partnerships, we've brought in senior people and then more mid-level people to help augment those partnerships.
Great, great. What traits or experience do you look for in a potential Clearbrook staff member? I know you have different types of roles.
It's a great question. I really look at people who have differentiated themselves. So, somebody who started out in athletics and was a high performer in athletics, given my background, if you have excelled in athletics, you have the drive, you have the persistence to do well in business. That would be somebody I would, definitely talk to. Somebody who has had a niche in financial services. They have committed to that niche. Somebody who has a diverse background, whether it's color, race, language, just I love diversity, diversity of thought. If you go across the employees at Clearbrook, everybody has a very diverse background. They've also been in the trenches. They've managed money. They've done very, very interesting jobs over their careers. And one of the things I always ask when I interview people, and I ask them to do the same, I ask them to interview us. Because it's so important, because I'd like the people coming on board to make this the last step in their career. So I want them to interview us as much as I interview them, because Clearbrook is a family, and I want somebody who comes into Clearbrook to feel that they're part of that family. So hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. And it does answer my question. And also I appreciate that you mentioned about interviewing for the person who's applying for the position with Clearbrook, for example, interviewing you or your company as much as you're interviewing them. That's been brought up from a few of my guests, other hiring managers too. My last guest, who is an executive director at St. Louis Development Corporation, they do a lot of great things for St. Louis, as well as guests I previously had who was the first inaugural VP of Indeed, which is obviously major. And I talked, especially with Paul Wolf, the one from Indeed, about how it's so important, how he looks for the very same thing as you, someone who's asking very diligent questions, who's truly considering is this a fit both for the company, but also for themselves. Because as you said, Clearbrook is a family, and I think that's amazing that you regard your business in that way. And yes, I think that's super important point that you bring up. And sometimes, especially early on in the career, but sometimes further down the career, further higher level, I guess career ranks too, sometimes don't put as much value on what you bring up, making sure that this is going to be a long-term stay. Younger generations, absolutely, because that's just the nature, for better or for worse. But I think it's very important for anyone to think, is this really going to be a long-term fit, especially the type of both clients, partners, and individuals that work for you. It's more senior level, and that's great that you bring that up. So you mentioned, interview. What do you look for in a resume from a job applicant? From a job applicant.
Well, you and I both know resumes, are just one kind of look into the candidate.
Correct.
Um, but again, that diversity, that differentiation in a resume. If when I coached my kids when they were younger, is bring out those things that, happen in your lives that are different. Just don't create a template like everybody else's. Think about things that, make you different, that when somebody looks at your resume, they're like, wow, this is maybe odd, but, I want to find more about that. It's the little things that stick out. Uh, so I'm always looking for, something that intrigues me about somebody's resume.
Awesome. Thanks for that input there. Is Clearbrook currently hiring?
We are always hiring. We're opportunistic in our hiring. So there's such great people out there and people that can add to our growth. So I'm always talking to people, and we are always receiving solicitations or resumes and from great people around the world, and always looking at partners. I mean, one of the things that we'll talk about, but there's no better way to move companies, sports teams ahead than partnering with better people than I feel than myself. I mean, I surround myself with people who are better in different areas than I am. And it's the same way it's hiring or partnering with other entities, is that's how you get ahead in business.
Absolutely. So you heard it, everyone. You're a high quality candidate. There may be a place, right? That's great. And then not related to business, but you're overall, as I mentioned, you have a very diverse background. I love it. And I think it's super cool that you sell competitively. Tell me a little bit more about anything sailing related, whether it's those 2 championships that you won. I heard that you also sailed in a campaign to participate in the Olympics.
Yeah, so I started sailing when I was 10 years old, and I continued to sail. So I have 3 great kids. My middle daughter, who has sailed on 2 world championship teams
Wow.
that we won, and we were runner-up in Bermuda during Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, wow.
And so she's been active, and my other 2 kids have been active with me, but not to the extent that Mackenzie has been. Back in '88, I sailed with a great friend, Kevin Mahaney, who won the silver in Barcelona in '92. But
Whoa.
I had participated in '84 and '88 and didn't have another 4 years to give. So we were right there, and my good friend John Kostecki represented the U.S. in the soloing class. We did not. We were asked to be alternates, but
Hmm.
so I really feel, and we'll talk about this, I think, but I
Yeah.
really feel that combining, competitive sports with business helps you get ahead in business because sports um, really is a great way to concentrate and to formulate a life uh, in a different aspect than you do in business. And it has really helped me individually and those around me accelerate Clearbrook. So, both the Olympic campaigns and the World Championship teams that we've had has really added to the success of Clearbrook.
I'm sure. And do you have any, like, what's your next sailing?
Yeah, so we'll be in
Championship?
Norway June 15th to the 22nd,
Wow.
participating in another World Championship. And there'll be 20 teams. And we are just one of Steve Madeira will be sailing with me. We've known each other since we were 11 years old.
Hmm.
And he's been on both winning teams. Jen Leary's been on both winning teams. She is an incredible sailor. And then Kyle Hanlon will be on board, and he's been on a ton of teams as well. And so we're guardedly optimistic, as they say,
Yes.
going into Norway this summer.
Rooting you on
Yeah.
for sure. You have yet another fan, right? And tell me more about your book. What's it
Right.
about, etc.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to write a book since I was about 23, 24. And I was very fortunate to meet Candy Cross, who has been a partner in writing my book. And it's
Andy's
called,
amazing, by the way.
she is great. And the book is called Voyage to Victory. And it's really a professional a building book where I marry sports and business.
Hmm.
And I look at how uh, athletes use different strategies and how CEOs or people in business should be utilizing similar strategies. And some of my mentors, like General Schwarzkopf, who grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, where my dad and my grandfather did, how he stayed alive in many battles compared to other generals who didn't. And I used to follow him and see him and read all his books. And I won't give away my book, but there's just a lot of strategies of different individuals that I believe people in business should be using. And I marry the sailing and the business and how I've utilized it and some great stories over the years. And so the book should be out on Amazon in the next week or two. And
Great.
I'm just thrilled. It's really come together well.
Oh, that's awesome. And again, that title is Voyage to Victory: Stories and Strategies for Resilience, Risk, and Reward. So check it out. I will be. I'm really excited to read it and delve into it. And yeah, good for you. You have a very diverse background. I love this. I love that you do selling in general, and I love that, as you mentioned in your book, you kind of marry the two together with business and sports, in your case with sailing. And I'm very excited to check that out. So kudos to you. Where can
Thank
people
you,
learn?
Leslie.
Of course, it's awesome. Where can people learn more about Clearbrook?
So our website is clearbrookglobal.com. And we have a section of a lot of blogs that we're proud of. So feel free to go to www.clearbrookglobal.com. And we love chatting with people. And you'll see the team page. And People can check out all the great partners I have, and a lot of them have been with Clearbrook for close to 15, 16, 17 years. So that's, as we talked about, Leslie, that's a testament to
Yes.
The family type business that we run.
I love that you have long-term partners. Congrats. I think you mentioned Mitsubishi and LG. I think we're also two partners. That's amazing. And so good for you. Yeah, that's it's been wonderful. So wonderful interviewing you today. You've been such a value add. And you've given some great tips and advice to job seekers in general, and particularly, I'm sure those job seekers in the financial sector will additionally find your input very valuable, especially from someone who's done amazing things. I can say it, that you've done amazing things in your.
Well, hopefully, I have many years more ahead of me to continue to flourish. And Leslie, again, I really appreciate the time with you, because you are so successful in your own realm as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure having you on. And thank you also to all of you guests for continuously tuning into Ask the Hiring Manager, and stay tuned for another great episode. Bye, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. I'm Leslie Hunter, president of Resume Makeover. I've been helping job seekers for nearly a decade to acquire their dream jobs and achieve the income they desire, from entry-level applicants to C-suite executives and everyone in between. From your resume to your cover letter, LinkedIn profile, bio, or website content, I'm here for you. And now I'm going to open the door and interview some of the top hiring managers so that you can have the insight that you need to book the jobs that you want. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager.